Why is the biggest source of stress when you're dealing with cancer money? Why are cancer patients terrified that they'll be blindsided with big bills? In this conversation with Jessica Gravel, she had the worst insurance, as she calls it. If you want to learn something about how to navigate the insurance system while you're kicking cancer's ass, be sure to tune in for this episode. Welcome back to Kicking Cancer's Ass, the podcast for people who've been impacted by cancer and want to change the story. You want knowledge, confidence, power, power to prevent, power to detect, power to obliterate, so that cancer is just part of your story. If you want to support the podcast, please join us over at kcapodcast.com and become a paying subscriber. That way you get articles that are only for subscribers and the ability to comment and interact with the community of people committed to changing the narrative about cancer and kicking cancer's ass. Please rate, share, and review, and let's get started with Jessica Gravel. Let's jump into the healthcare maze. When we talked, you said at the time when you thought there was a problem, you had to pay a massive amount out of pocket just to have your concern taken seriously. And then fight with scheduling nightmares and misinformation. Can you walk us through the absurd obstacles when you realized the system was working against you?
At the time was getting healthy. So when my employer offered insurance, I was opting for the cheapest deductible for month to month because I didn't plan on using that policy at all. I was out living the marathon life or just doing other stuff, and runners often ignore different body ailments and continue to keep pushing. So I was like, even if I did get hurt, not really planning on using the insurance. So it was the lowest deductible, the lowest monthly premium, which then I find out it ends up having like actually no deductible and you have to pay your out of pocket max. So that's all it is. I believe it was like $8,000, maybe it was $6,000 or $8,000 that year. And so anything that I went to go do, I had to pay 100% for 100% of a biopsy, 100%. So the biopsy was actually by the time I got to the biopsy, I had met my out of pocket max from everything. My first cancer appointment, I didn't pay a penny towards anybody within the oncologist or anything within that. So, like, while I thought that first year was really, really hard and it was absurd that I am shelling out all this money, once it actually was cancer, I ended up having the best insurance policy essentially for my situation because I didn't have to pay anything for that first year. So while I was going through all of that stress with the scheduling, I will say that it ended up being one of the blessings was that I didn't have to fight the insurance for anything. It was 100% covered. I was staying with that company again for one more year, and so I anticipated that, and I knew exactly what my premium was going to be, so I could plan one more year knowing that I had to pay like that giant out of the pocket premium. So I scheduled surgeries in the beginning of January, then met my out of pocket max again by March or April, and then I can kind of like coast for the rest of the year. So honestly, now I have changed insurances and I'm on the smaller deductible and 20% plus the copay. And I have no clue why. I just went to the oncologist on Friday and one bill, I look on the EOD, I'm expecting $18. And I go to hand over my card because she's like 416. And I was like, oh, even less than 18. And she's like, I just want to confirm $416. And I was like, whoa, hang on. No, I wasn't expecting that. And so then, you have to like sit there and nobody will tell you anything at that register or counter. You have to wait for the boss. So you have to go to another office. And then I go there and of course she's in a meeting. So then I have to leave a note to hopefully get called and then nobody calls me back. So then I have to send like a passive aggressive message to my oncologist that's like, help me help you guys. Like I would have paid the $400 if I would know what it's for. And so finally, 3 days later, they call me back and the Lupron shot that I pay $400 for, I guess, every 3 months, which I wasn't like used to that. Cause again, I was used to Like, so I guess that's 20% of what like the shot costs. The knowing and paying a little bit more, not that I'm paying necessarily more, but it's like spread out and I'm much more aware of that finances has all been a lot more crazy. And then after my reconstruction surgery kind of had some hiccups, I finally United, well, my one of my insurance companies was able to reach out to me for a case manager, but I was switching the insurance company, so I never utilized that one. So when this one has come around, I have started to ask for a case manager. But of course, when I asked for the case manager, she told me that most people have a more serious condition than my like tighter muscles or whatever she saw on the diagnostic code. And I said, "Oh, ma'am, what sort of serious conditions are you talking about?" And she was like, "Well, people with cancer." And I was like, "Great. I'm a cancer survivor, so can I get that case manager?"
Absolutely astounding. And I'm shaking my head because I don't think I don't think people realize that once you've concluded, okay, this isn't actually going to kill me, right? I'm going to live through this. It's a pain in the neck. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to live through it. That you're constantly stressed about the financial ramifications, whether it's because you can't work as many hours because it's impacting your income. Some people are afraid of losing their jobs. You didn't. I didn't. Well, I was working for myself. It would have been tricky to fire myself. But it's opaque. The whole system is opaque. So the things you need to care for yourself, you can't negotiate, you can't price check. You're just handed bills, and then only if you can't pay them are people willing to work with you. So, did you, in year two, because I know we're in year 2 or 3, have you started treating your finances different and kind of creating a fund, a savings fund for the healthcare curveball? Because if I remember, I mean, Jessica, you're pretty young. You weren't saving for your healthcare as a young woman getting healthy.
No, it's funny you bring that up. I mean, I started off almost as a I started off as a finance or a marketing or an accounting major. I started off as a business major. So money was what I thought of and as my first, and then money went to the back of my head as I wanted to enjoy life and I wanted to experience things and vacations. No, like living in the moment definitely was more of what I was considering. And when I created my budget was when it was considering medical expenses, this is how much like one ER appointment costs. This is how much if I tucked away enough for an ankle surgery or like some stitches. But I never considered that. And so since then, I do have a financial advisor. We did meet, we went over the spreadsheet, and the number, like A1 cell is basically like medical expense. I mean, it's rent, but like, mortgages and all that. But like next to that, it is medical and so it goes into planning for so much more. Another piece of the planning I had never even considered. I went back home last July into Indiana, and so from Texas, I wasn't able to get any of the medications either. So I thought, oh, Walgreens or just a nationwide pharmacy transfer things over and that should work. But like my doctor's not licensed in Indiana, so therefore the pharmacist can't fill it. And so yeah, like there's just a lot more of like of more planning that is needed that I definitely didn't anticipate.
I think it's really interesting because I traveled during my treatment, both during chemo and as I was continuing the immunotherapy. And I mean, the benefit of 43 years is I started talking with my doctors about it really early and started negotiating. Okay, can I do an infusion in Texas when I'm in Austin? Can I do an infusion in New York when I'm in New York? And interestingly, they didn't want me to do that. They wanted to do it all here for a host of reasons. But because I was up to just immunotherapy, I wasn't having chemo anymore. They actually switched me from a 3 week cycle to a 6 week cycle so I could go away and then bumped my last immunotherapy to the day before I left. And my first immunotherapy was like the day I got back. It was as tight as we could, but it came from asking because I knew it was going to be a problem, which you didn't know it was going to be a problem because you've never dealt with this. Now, speaking of things, you talked about Lupron. And another thing I believe younger women going through cancer treatment don't know about is Lupron. Do you want to explain why you take Lupron and why that's important?
Oh yeah. Um and I honestly I have a young 20-year-old or 30-year-old friend. She'll like that when she hears this that I called her 20 though. So I do have a younger friend who's in med school right now and she wants to go into like oncology and all of that. And she's absolutely mind blown when she hears about Lupron because it's turning my ovaries off. So I do not produce estrogen anymore within my body. I actually was completely unaware that, I mean, like, I don't want to say like I was unaware because when you like reflect back at it, like it makes logical sense when you say the things that you were told, like you were told your body can't have estrogen. You're told that like we need to remove the estrogen out of your body, but we're not like, and then I got my first chemo treatment, and when I got my first chemo treatment I absolutely fell to the floor. My bones were hurting completely. I had all of that sickness, but on top of that I was having my very very last menstrual cycle, and so it was coming from it was horrible. And then when I tell my doctor about it and she's like, yeah, that was probably your last menstrual cycle. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, the chemo is going to suck all of that estrogen out of you. And then right after that, you're going to go on Lupron. And that's where we turn your ovaries off. That's why we asked you if you wanted to freeze your eggs. And it's like, I was there for all of these discussions. But like once it like hits you and it's happening, it's significantly different.
I'll bet. So, one of the things that a lot of doctors don't always bring up is that some types of tumors, they actually recommend you take Lupron before chemo. You shut down the ovaries. But the reason isn't to deprive your body of estrogen, because in my case, for example, I'm ER negative. It's actually to preserve reproductive flexibility. So my sister was in one of the first clinical trials for Lupron because she was 29 when she was diagnosed. And it worked. It shut her down. And then when she was done with the chemo, it all came back, which in her case was safe and led to having two kids. For you, this is actually protecting you from recurrence, correct?
Yeah, I'm on Lupron for the reoccurrence. I started off on the 3 month shot, and then I went and got a second opinion, and that was in my little like freaked out stage. I want to do everything by like every single study, and the study was by the 1 month shot, so I wanted the 1 month shot. And then, like a year into the 1 month shot, I said, I want to get going out of here. Let's switch back to that 3 month shot. Like, I need some time away from you guys. But so I'm on that. But when I did get my second opinion, because some things weren't going so in my way with scheduling with my current and the oncologist I've been with, I got a second opinion, and she said the Natalie study had just come out. And so the Natalie study had opened up Kisqali to stage 2 and stage 3. So I guess, right, I'm new to the breast cancer scene, but I guess previously Kisqali was only for stage 4, and then the Natalie study was what opened it up from stage 2 and stage 3. And that's significant because when I had my surgery, or when I before I had my surgery, my MRI had me measured at a stage 2. And then I wasn't going to have surgery for a while within my story, so they threw me on tamoxifen, and then that actually shrank me. So when it came out, it was back to a stage 1. Because that we have one MRI in which it had reached for me to be a stage 2, I guess it qualifies me for Chris Calvi now. And so when I went and got the second opinion, who I'm sure that doctor had something to do with the Natalie study, closely followed it, was related to it, whatever. She was like, "Did you know that you can also have?" And so when she told me the 1 month shot, she added on Kisqali, and so I'm on letrozole and then Kisqali, which Kisqali is a 3 weeks on and then 1 week off, and then letrozole is every day. I'm kind of on those three with then a ton of supplements to try to make me feel a little bit better.
And all of those are about preventing a recurrence, repeat disease, right?
Yes, my OnCo score was rather high. I don't remember the quote for that. So the reasons why I guess we're on this too is my OnCo score was high, and then they did I'm a luminol B. So because of those reasons, it's the more aggressive cancer. So we're taking a more aggressive approach.
And you're healthy, so you can withstand a more aggressive approach, and you're young. And my family always says, we're not playing for 5 years, we're playing for 50. And we're not playing to just kind of get on by. We're playing to be able to ski and hike and wakeboard and travel to live fully. So bring it. What do you got? Bring it. I think you're in that same ilk.
Oh, I am. I mean, and I'm trying mushroom tinctures and I don't know, like some I ask my doctors about everything, so nothing counter interacts and the big P word, like I know that there's all stuff to look for, but they say they don't care if it's pseudoscience, if I can be nicer and more polite and more patient, then they support anything.
So I was at a conference in November. So I'm going to throw out to you stuff that hasn't been, it's early stage, but anti-progestins. Talk to your doctors, see if that works. It might be suitable for you. I have no idea, but that's where a lot of people are looking. I've read and seen early lab-based things on Zepbound, trizepatide, and mifepristone, which is both mind-blowing. Now, I want to go back in time a little bit because I remember you being very persistent, just a persistent person. And there's a story you told about calling a scheduler and saying something along the lines of, I'm going to call you tomorrow and at noon and every hour after until you get me scheduled. Which my version of this joke, or it's not a joke, was trust me, I can outlast your hold music. But tell us your story. Was that natural or was that the marathoner in you? Was that cancer bringing it out? Like, where did this, I will be on you every hour, I will be relentless until this gets done? Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's funny. No, I think that, and it comes from my family members. I'm fairly confident. I have a very demanding both sides of my mother and my father's side. We are very outspoken, and if we have a certain feeling, we're gonna probably say it. So I've been trying to kind of reel that in, and now I get to wait in the doctor's office for like 45 minutes, and that's the regular, and I'm like not the biggest priority, and then it's all of that. I've been in a lot of pain lately, and the pain has made me, well, now we're good, but like with the first few months of 2025, I definitely felt that way. So I was kind of forgetting appointments, and I was definitely irritated waiting in the stupid chairs and moving from this room to that waiting room to that waiting room. And then the beginning of the year, you have to get your insurance card and your ID out, even though it was fine 2 days before when you were just here. Anyway, so like it's definitely I've been more patient, I would say, but also I'm pretty sure all of my doctors have an expedited me to certain personnel who are going to help me get my issues solved. I will also add in that I have started using AI technology like Chat GPT to communicate to the doctors as well. So that way, like my tone or my like pain or frustrations or exaggerations, like that I'm feeling in the moment for whoever said whatever to me, isn't kind of there. Like when you go to the doctor, to the PCP, like your regular doctor, and they ask you when your last mammogram was, and you just look at them and you're like, so you're new here and you didn't read my file. So that can rub me the wrong way. So anyways, I use like Chat GPT and AI technology and say, this is how I feel. Tailorize a letter for my neurologist, tailorize a letter for my plastic surgeon, so that way it's been a lot more helpful, and then I send the message ahead of time, and then we have to talk less, and then I get out of there sooner, so it's been a little bit helpful.
I think that's really smart. And I think it's important for listeners and viewers to understand the difference between asking ChatGPT what to do and asking ChatGPT to help improve your communication to this kind of specialist. The second is a great idea. The first could be an avenue into realms of hallucinations you just don't need as a cancer patient.
And let me like give an example of what I would say to ChatGPT. I have pain when I raise my arm directly up and to the side, and then ChatGPT would say, "Does it hurt when you touch your nose, or does it?" And it like asks you to do something, and then you say yes or no, and then it's like it sounds like your T6. And then I go to the doctor and I'm like, my T6 hurts. I don't know what that is, but they do, you know? So that's where it's kind of helped me.
Very interesting. Okay, so Kicking Cancer's Ass now has chat prompts. Okay, here's my version of the you didn't read my chart. So I get an I'm sure it was an automated thing through my chart, my health, and it's you haven't had your annual physical. It's May of 2023. I'm still recovering from my surgery. And I wrote back and basically said, you need to look at my chart. And they said, well, you need to have a physical. We need your labs, what have you. I said, I am confident you don't have a patient who has as many labs weekly as I do right now. So could you check with the doctor? Because I really don't want to spend any more time in doctor's offices than I need to right now. And I have a verifiable army of doctors watching me. And the doctor got back to me over the chat and was like, "Yeah, how about we check in December?" Sounds great. Thank you.
He might as well say to you, like, hey, we got to come in just to check your cholesterol, or you need to get like a skin check right now. And you're like lying in with like a major operation.
Seriously, I'm like, my skin's been checked. They even found incidental findings. I had giant kidney cysts. Like, they were terrified. They're like, your kidney cysts are twice the size of your kidneys. Is this a problem? Well, no, but they shouldn't be there. Well, okay then. So they're running me through literally the day after surgery, racing me to a CT scan. And they say to me at the CT scan, they were very sweet, but because I'm very small and they only had two CT machines, I was going to the pediatric one. So it was small. And they said, okay, please lift your hands over your head. I'd just come out of my mastectomy in deep. I looked at them and I was nice. I was kind of amused. I said, I'm 100% certain I'm not allowed to do that. So, and this poor tech looks at me and she's like, what are we going to do with your arms? Right. All right, enough on this. I want to blow people's minds. So, what blew my mind, besides all the stories of you being persistent and stubborn and wonderful, is that you kept running. I should caveat with, I don't like running. I work out, I like to jump rope and jump on boxes and lift weights, but like running a marathon or a half marathon is close to zero on my life list. But you kept running. In fact, I think you completed a half marathon during treatment. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, I know. So I have backwards logic within a lot of things, but in my mind, I thought that if I could like reproduce and make more cells and like just if I was exercising it out of my body, like the more, then maybe the chemo would leave faster and I would make more cells and my nails excuse me, my nails would grow back faster or things like that. So in my mind, I was thinking that would happen. The second bonus was is I would just absolutely take a long nap after doing all of that.
Okay, so you got more sleep and you felt like you were purging, like sweat. I'm going to sweat this all out, right? So here's an interesting thing I learned on the journey. There's a growing body of research that exercise helps reduce the side effects of chemotherapy. So, you might have been like reducing your side effects by all that running.
I mean, I could see where it would. It was also nice to be outside. So I think getting, because I had chemo in September and October, so it was kind of like a great time down here in Texas. So the sun was better. I don't think that I would be out there as much in July, but yeah, no, the sweat, and then it helped rehydrate too. You had a natural want to hydrate.
That's brilliant, just brilliant. So your running community got behind you too. You told me that they organized some things, and you're very independent and you're terrible at asking for help. How did that community support? What did they do? And how did that support impact you?
There was another individual who May of last year, he did succumb to his cancer around the same time as my cancer. I believe I was starting chemo when he was scheduled to have surgery. He had stomach cancer. Stomach cancer seems to be a pretty big, crazy one. So the community came together and they got a bunch of items together and had raffle tickets, and we raffled off there's a running store, Two Rivers Running, and so they had different like organizations donate, and then we had the drawing there, and so it was really nice. And then Jerry and I were able to like split that. On top of doing that, the running group I had like a meal train. I was able to create a calendar, and I don't have any children, but I have two dogs who are used to me running them and me used to like getting them outside. And so I could put on the schedule like Monday, Wednesday, Friday childcare, and childcare meant that my dogs needed some running. And so then people could sign up or say, hey, can I switch a Tuesday for a Wednesday? And I'm like, great, I don't want to do any of them. So, yes, like, come on in. So it was a lot of that by the end of it, because my parents would have to fly down to help me. They do attend doctor's appointments with me when I know one's going to be annoying or stressful. And then they've driven me and are helping me kind of recover from like smaller phase surgeries as well.
So again, you're terrible at asking for help. You needed help either because you didn't want to do things or because you couldn't. How did that change your perspective now? What did that either help you realize, if anything? You could say, well, I still hate asking for help, but I'm just curious if that experience had an impact on you.
It sure did. So in January of this year, I had like phase 1.25, who knows like what it is, but it's the fat graphing, and that kicked my butt. And I thought I could do a lot during that time. I thought that was going to be an easier surgery than it was. So I didn't have help lined up. And so I had to be asking for help when I was hurting. And I tried to, like I said, suffer through it. And then I felt for the first time like I wanted to throw up from pain, and like just like would start sweating out of nowhere. And my like nursing friend, a neighbor, would be, I'm like, why am I sweating? She's like, that's probably pain, like you need to take more pain meds and sit down. So then I had to just get help with somebody making me a meal each night and making sure that there's for sure food, because I couldn't stand in the kitchen long enough to cook a skillet. And then I would try to just throw a skillet meal in there and then lay down and then try to get back up and stir it, but then it would be burnt or undercooked. And you already don't have like the want to eat from chemo. So, yeah, so I was like, can someone just come over and cook me food and throw it in front of me? And I would eat it. And I'm like, this tastes like garbage still because I didn't have an appetite. And they're like, thank you. And I'm like, no, I'm very grateful, but does this taste good to you? And they're like, it tastes fine. And I'm like, man, this taste buds are awful.
So, were you surprised? Were you surprised that people stood up for you and that on the drop of a hat, because you didn't plan for it, they were willing to come and be for you?
I was absolutely surprised, and now they're still lingering around. And even though, like, so I feel better now, and I'll just be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And 5 minutes later, text them, like, I did it. I'm laying down. Thanks. Like, but yeah, no, I mean, and I realize that I can't do it. I did push myself too far. So I ran the half marathon, and then in January, after radiation, I ran 120 miles in January. I ran like two back to back half marathons, and my hip was really, really hurting. and I was blaming the chemo meds essentially. And then we did the DEXA scan when I got that second opinion, and it came back I have osteopenia. So then one of my doctors told me, like, it's really bad if I get a stress fracture in my femur. So that was kind of in the back of my head, and I thought I scaled back pretty good. So then in September, no, in August before my deep in September, I thought I'm just going to run 1 mile a day. And I thought that was like a normal thing, but my body, like my leg just wouldn't do it. So I did kind of think that I had a stress fracture. And then I did the deep, and so I had the recovery from that. And when I started running in like November, my hip hurt really, really, really bad. So that's when I found out I have a hip tear and a cyst. So,
The hit parade, it just keeps coming. Maybe you want to try swimming.
but do you know what happens when gravel goes in water?
I don't. Tell me what happens.
It sinks. I am not a good swimmer.
I am not either, but I'm also not a good runner. So I love this. I mean, I'm sorry about the hip. Does this mean you're going to need to have a hip replacement, or can they repair the labrum?
So I did 13 sessions of PT, and then I got a shot in there, and all the scans, and because first we had to like clear that it wasn't cancer, even though we all knew it wasn't cancer. I have scoliosis. I know where all my arthritis points are at age 39. And going into, so I get my PT, and then we chase the pain up my back, and I finished out my rest of my 7 PT sessions because I'm only allowed hard limit 20 PT sessions. And then so I'm out of PT sessions. And so I can have like a scope surgery, but I would have to, again, back to the healthcare system, I would have to forego PT is option one, and do my best to PT myself after the surgery. And when I called my case manager about this, it's because this PT is not medically required, but it's just suggested according to stuff. My other option is to pay for one out of pocket PT, hope that I can jam all of that in my head because I have my doctorate in body anatomy already. And then I could do it myself after I pay out of pocket one session. So, or I can just kind of live with the pain, I guess, are my options. And so, and lighten the load, so to say. And I'm not going to say on here what I'm doing if I do want to have this surgery or not, because I am supposed to reduce my activity, and that's my final statement on that matter.
I understand. And if you want, when we're not on the podcast, I have some success with appealing all the way to state authorities. The definition of medically necessary is different when it's the insurer versus the state insurance commissioner. And that's all I'll say about that. So, speaking of the healthcare system and all these hurdles, like, what would you change if you could change how the system works and, make it work better? What are the top 2 or 3 things you would change?
I don't know, and I'm embarrassed to say that as I'm a BCBA, so I mean I work with codes and I work with insurance as a biller too. I think that there has to be a way of regulating that the CPT codes are being utilized appropriately and not abused, but there has to be a way of allowing more freedom. So somebody who's had 7 surgeries since August of 2023 can have more than 20 sessions of PT. And I mean, I feel this way with any sort of dual diagnosis or multiple diagnosis. Or, I mean, the insurance company even sent me a letter or like a little research article supporting their like stuff. And it's like, cool, where's the, like, it just, so I think to try to make things more personalized, it's so tricky to actually do that. I think once you pay your deductible, maybe you have a mandatory sit down with the case manager and like, is there any education that needs to happen about that? Maybe every 5 years we try to teach Americans what the deductible actually means and what it network and out of network means. Maybe that should be part of high school curriculums. There's, a variety of options. It definitely starts with education because people don't even know about people don't even know what their deductible is.
Yeah, I've had to explain to people what's a deductible, what's a copay, what's coinsurance, what's in network, what's out of network. And I think your point on a case manager, you know, we're not experts. Even you who's in the system, we're not experts. Even your oncologist isn't an expert. But there are nurse navigators. There are people who work across all the specialties. They're just very few and far between. But I believe they can be billed. And it seems like one of the first things you want to do with a newly diagnosed cancer patient is sit down with that kind of person and start to map it out, both time and money, and sequence, right? There's a sequence to it. So, okay. So you mentioned this a little earlier that you have a comment. Go for it.
To build on that, some sort of checklist for when to seek a second opinion. I don't know why that came up in my head, but when you were saying that, that would benefit the insurance company as well, because a second opinion has to cost them more money. We're basically just asking, do you think that person was right? And most of them are all reading the same research kind of anyways, so they're gonna, for the most part, agree. But like, why get a second opinion? What's happening? Like, there should be some sort of person to communicate to before you get a second opinion, or to flush that out.
I agree. And particularly if you live, like you don't live, from what I remember, you're in Texas, but you're not close to MD Anderson or to like the major cancer centers in the United States, of which MD is one of them. So to get a second opinion from a National Comprehensive Cancer Institute, they actually will have more information. They'll know more about trials. They often have specialists for your kind of cancer, not just breast cancer, but ER positive. I don't know if you were triple positive or what have you, but your flavor of tumor, your pathology is what should determine your treatment. And getting a second opinion can be the difference between torture and not torture, and just being a more informed partner as a patient.
I agree.
Let's roll back to your switch from marketing, finance, and all these things where you were climbing the ladder and you're striving for success. Even before cancer, you made a shift, right? You made a shift about getting healthy and prioritizing being an average person who appreciated little joys. What prompted that shift, and what has the impact of cancer been on that shift?
Well, so when you said shift, to be completely honest, the biggest shift that has changed probably since I've talked to you, as I thought about how I've changed my diet further, is that I'm like now growing produce. Like, yeah, like, so I started hydro growing. And then, anyways, my ADHD kicked in and I thought about my plants for a big second. Anyways, I'll be very honest, but that's right. But no, so I started like growing because I wanted to be more. That's one of my biggest shifts. And then, to be honest, so my life really is all about plants. And then like I'll watch this little cabbage grow, and on harder days or frustrating days, like it's soothing in so many ways, where I can see that each day I'm rebuilding and I'm regrowing, and the cabbage is rebuilding and that's regrowing, and it does continue to make me more grateful. And my yard I have wildflowers everywhere, so I really am just trying to like bring more like positivity and like beauty to what can kind of be an ugly world. And before Texas summer kicks in, I'm trying to just maximize on that part. But what was your full question to make sure I answer?
So actually, I think you answered it great. But my full question was, you were already making this shift to be a person living, I'll say, in gratitude for the little joys. And then you get smacked in the head with this cancer curveball. You've just gotten healthy. It's kind of absurd, right? You lose 90 pounds, you get healthy, and then you find out you have cells running amok. Did you find with that shift, you shifted to growing your own food, which, I mean, we don't know what causes cancer, but in the world, it's 1 out of every 4 people. And in the US, it's 1 out of every 2. So something's wrong. Something's not good here. And so I think growing your own food to the extent you can is great. But the cabbage, I often give people a picture of or a crocheted plant of a sunflower because it makes people smile. And you watch them grow and get big. And I don't exactly know what you do when the sunflower keels over. That's probably not a good moment. But during the process of the sunflower growing, it's a very positive, empowering thing. And I think we just have to keep, there are winter vegetables. We just have to keep cultivating the garden and finding things to focus on. Because if you focus on what's bad or painful or what have you, that's what you see more of.
To continue with the analogy, I thought in Texas, like, what can you grow? Or really, what can you grow anywhere? But like, so much of like kale actually needs some coldness to taste better. So when you actually get into some of it all, like it's been a nice escape on that side of it. Another escape of this has all I've been posting on like my Facebook and like the meal train little things, just keeping in touch with everybody. But like, so as that's kind of like progressed, people have reconnected. Like one of my just friends of friends from 20 years ago, they saw each other and then it gets brought up. So it is kind of nice being open and vulnerable and kind of like sharing about it. I got a few messages the other day like, hey, you haven't updated in a minute. I'm not saying that it's like a content creator by any ways, but just keeping my loved ones and those people around me like filled in on what's going on. And I think half of them, they love the like science of this journey as well, and seeing me transform from a runner to a gardener and just whatever is next. Having short hair now. My hair was always curly before, but now I don't know, like it may not be long anymore because it's hot down here. So just continue to transform, and you have to keep shifting because nothing stays stagnant. Stuff that stays stagnant it's not good.
Well, and the environment's going to change. Something will change. I like to tell people curveballs are inevitable. You don't get to choose the pitch, you only get to choose the swing. So practice lots of different swings. All right. For someone who has just heard it's cancer, I'm sorry, it's malignant, and is about to enter the healthcare maze, what's your most practical piece of advice?
Ooh. Someone who's about to enter the maze is I would probably start organizing their documents and their information better, like coming up with a better organization system of your notes. The doctors do not communicate as much as you think they do as things go along. So you're the one who has to be the communicator between it all and to have that piece out. So all mine stuff is about organization. And if you don't have somebody to call a scheduler, I have considered that. If I was to go through like another rough pain spot, I think I'm going to have my friends call people because I can't sit on the phone and wait. Like it's just it. So I guess that's another thing that I would tell them is ask for help in anything that you struggle with. If you struggle with it, it's not worth it because somebody else can help you and not, I don't say they won't care, but they're not going to be bothered by it. If someone has to call and make an appointment for me, they're not going to be bothered by it. Whereas if I have to interact with this person or this situation, I'm going to be annoyed and it's going to rev me. And I need all the positive energy and all the sunflowers I need. So I'm going to go plant a fun sunflower. Help me out over here, please. And having people to support you through that's been great.
I think that's fantastic. Fantastic advice. I think that I created a binder and I called it my Cancer Obliteration Project. And it came with me every time I saw a medical professional. And I had tabs and the whole thing. I also, since putting out the book, created a workbook that people can download, a PDF, to help structure their own binder and give them things to do, things to ask, things to just go through the journey as an educated partner in the journey. But the asking for help and saying, I don't want to do this. Could someone help me? Now, some places you have to give them HIPAA authorization. So, go to Mama Bear Legal or something and download a HIPAA authorization and give it to the people you want to book appointments for you and let them do it. But I agree, let people help.
It's not like my friend, the person, your dad or whoever you're giving HIPAA privileges to. It's odds are they're not going to want anything else but just you to be happy. So just, I mean, trusted people, obviously, but yeah, asking for all of that is needed.
Absolutely. All right, lightning round. First thing that comes to your mind, each one. What's one piece of practical advice for dealing with medical bureaucracy?
Argue back.
What unexpected skill from your pre-cancer life proved most valuable during your cancer journey?
Being able to pre-plan.
Being organized, love it. What's the most helpful thing someone did for you on your journey?
Made me dinner.
How do you see the world differently post-cancer versus pre-cancer?
I see so many people getting stressed out about things that actually don't matter. I see and myself, I'm sure if I'm a part of the ants going marching, but just when you look around, everyone's stressed and frustrated and just tired and this didn't happen correctly, so like the world's gonna end, but like it's really not gonna end, you're fine. And it's hard to tell yourself that until something that's like really sucky like this comes at you your way.
I think that's right. Don't sweat the small stuff, and almost everything is small stuff. Jessica, thank you for being part of the book. Thank you for sharing your journey again. I hope that now that you're past all the surgeries, that everything is, as they say in Silicon Valley, up and to the right. You're simply going to be doing great, planting cabbages and sunflowers, and your hip heals, and you're able to run with your running group and play with your dogs, and everything in your life just fills you with joy. Probably won't be everything. That's just life. But I hope on the balance, you have a lot more joy than you have anything else. And with that, I want to thank the listeners for joining Kicking Cancer's Ass. I hope you learned something. Hope you laughed. Maybe you cried. Maybe you slapped your head listening to some of Jessica's story. But she is a winner. She's on the other side, looking great, living life. Jessica, thank you for being here.
Thank you.